Hello everybody, my name is Nemo and I'm playing some more Magic the Gathering Duels the Planeswalkers 2013. This time I'm gonna show you how I built my Orzhov deck. Well, at least this Orzhov deck, Procession. So let's get in there and I wanna mainly show you the cards I don't run and why I don't run them. But let's take a quick look at the mana curve beforehand. I got all the cards I want in there, so... of course I want 4 Terramorphic Expanses because this is a bit of a late game deck. It's not as late as Obedient Dead. I think that's the best deck that can, the deck that is most similar to this one. So we'll be talking about Obedient Dead a little bit while I'll talk about this deck, since they're so similar. But this isn't as late game of a deck as Obedient Dead, but it is quite late game. So you definitely want all your lands, 25 lands. I don't mind having 25 lands. And well, I don't play a lot of 6+ drops, like only one there, but I do run a lot of 5 drops, and that messes up the curve a little bit. As you can see, instead of being a smooth up up up, down down, now it's like up up up, down, and the same amount the 5 drops as the 4 drops. So yeah, that screws up the curve a little bit, but the reason is because the 5 drops in this deck are the cards that are going to win you the game, so you definitely want to include as many of those as possible without screwing up the mana curve too much. Alright, so that is it for the lands. I definitely want to talk about these Doom Travelers. This is the first thing you'll notice that may seem a little odd, is that I'm not running any of the Doom Travelers. Basically, I feel like these cards work way better in a deck that has a way to make them bigger than just 1/1s, especially in this format. A lot of like 1/1 creatures aren't going to do a lot in this format. There's a lot of 2/2s and just stuff that trade well with 1/1s, so they're not likely to ever be anything more than just chump blockers. Now, having said that, they combo really well with Zealous Persecution. That is the truth about it, but sometimes you're not gonna use that combo, so like that's only half the time. And other than that, like what's better than getting a 1/1 that becomes a 1/1 when it dies is getting a 2/2 that becomes a 2/2 when it dies. That's when you get value out of these guys, is when you have some pump that, you know, permanently pumps them, like there is in the Peacekeepers deck, which is why they're good in there. But in this deck I don't feel like they're really worth it. They're just like chump blockers for 2 turns, that's all they do, and I don't think I like them enough for that. And they don't combo well with Edge of the Divinity because they're only white, although I would enchant one of them just to make a 2/3 guy early. I mean, that's not too bad, but I got better options in this deck. This deck has a lot better options, and that is the third reason, that is the main reason, is that you have to do some pretty I mean, there's a lot of really powerful cards in this deck, and you have to do some really good thinking on which of those you want to run, because you're gonna have to make some cuts that you don't like making, and Doom Traveler is definitely one of those cuts that I don't really like making, but I wouldn't like making a different cut even less, or what? I'm not sure I follow myself, but yeah, there are other cards I would rather have than Doom Traveler. Even though I do like Doom Traveler, but yeah. So basically the other 1-drops I do run are Edge of the Divinity, which, yes, it's an aura, but aside from that it is amazing. This card is ridiculous for a 1-drop, and well, yeah, there is some inherent card disadvantage because it's an aura. Don't let that fool you into thinking that this is a bad card. It's definitely a really good card. It makes you guys really much stronger. So definitely run both of those. Reanimate is also an amazing card. It doesn't really combo well in this deck. There are a few things that want to get creatures out of the graveyard or stuff like that, and that is weird because this deck doesn't have anything that actually kills stuff. Well, not like outright kills anything. It has some stuff that potentially may kill something, but there's no like murders in this deck. For instance, Castigate, which is also a really good card, you exile the card you take out of their hand, so that doesn't combo with Reanimate. This thing may kill something inadvertently, or actually that's the main purpose of playing it, but still, it's not like a murder, and this is just exiling stuff. So while it doesn't combo extremely well with all your cards, it is a really powerful card, and you should definitely run it. In every deck that has Reanimate, it's always a really good combo to sometimes just not play anything turn 1, discard if you're under draw, and get your like 7-drop in the graveyard, and then you reanimate it the following turn. Sometimes that's just GG. So that combo is certainly possible in this deck, and there's a very good creature for it as well. So yes, but aside from that, like, stuff is gonna die in a normal game of Magic. So, and it's really good against the mill deck, of course, obviously. So Castigate I already talked about a little bit, but I pretty much already talked about this. Well, actually I didn't talk about this in my deck build for Obedient Dead, did I? I left a comment on my own deck build saying, hey, I forgot to talk about this card, but it's amazing. So Mirestole is amazing. If you didn't know that already, then now you know. Mirestole is an amazing card. Basically getting to look at anyone's hand for 1 mana and just getting rid of what you don't like, and then knowing what they have in your hand for the rest of the game and being able to base your whole battle plan around that is a very, very powerful ability to have. So Mirestole is really powerful, but you have to wait until turn 4, turn 5 to play it, and sometimes by the time you can play your Mirestole and look at their entire hand, they've already played that worship that you didn't want them to play, and now you lose because Obedient Dead can't deal with it. Well, first of all, of course, this deck can deal with worship, but aside from that, Castigate is better because it's a 2 mana cost, and you can just play it turn 2. So that's mainly where I was going with that. So yeah, really good. Doesn't combo with Reanimate, but other than that, fantastic card. I definitely advise running both of them. The only time you don't like seeing this is when the opponent is losing the game and top decking and not getting anything, and then you're winning the game anyway, so who cares. Moving on, because I think I talked about it a little bit too much, but it's such an amazing card. But hey, all these cards are, man, this deck is really powerful. So moving on, Morning Thrall, I don't like. It's a chump blocker that gains you 1 life. Great. Moving on. It's just bad. But it's a cool looking creature though. I don't know, it's like a flying fish or something with bones. Yeah, it's weird, but I like the art on it, but it's a bad creature nonetheless. Onyx Mage doesn't combo too well with the creatures in this deck. The reason I do run one of them in Rakdos is because in the Rakdos deck there are creatures that combo with it because they can tap and deal 1 damage to a creature and everything, and having tappers that have Death Touch is of course really powerful, so that combo there is very good. But this deck doesn't have that combo, so it is still a really good card, but there are better cards in this deck and you really need to run it. And the thing is also, this deck has so much removal that you don't need a creature with Death Touch. If you need to deal with something, you can just deal with it, So basically, Orzhov Guildmage is a better card because it has 2 toughness, and I really like that. I mean, there are decks like Mindstorms that if your creatures have 1 toughness, you're never going to be able to play them. So just that gap between 1 toughness and 2 toughness can make a big difference in this game. Other than that, yeah, I mean, it's just a good card. A 2/2 for 2. Get some stalling out there, or even some damage if you need it. And his ability comes in handy every once in a while, but it's not totally, it's not always relevant, but it's a nice bonus. But it's also just a 2/2 for 2, and I think that's better than a 2/1 for 2, whose ability is not always useful either. So yeah, Zealous Persecution is a ridiculous card. There are so many situations where this just outright wins you the game. Against token decks, you can see just how ridiculous this can be, and you can even while killing their 1/1s, you can also use it as a combat trick. It puts a gap of 2 power and toughness between your creatures and the opponent's creatures, and that is just a really good combat trick to have. And aside from being a combat trick, it also takes out 1 toughness creature, like I just said. And if you draw 2 of these, it's even better because you take out 2 toughness creatures as well. So they become even better in multiples, so you definitely want to run all of these cards. Midnight Haunting isn't always amazing, but if you want to make chump blockers, at least this makes like 2 at a time rather than 1 and then another one, which Doom Traveler does. So if you do need 2 chump blockers, then you know, for 1 turn, then you know, you got it. But aside from that, it is like you put 2 flyers on the board, and that's not bad at all. And it combos well with Zealous Persecution, so I feel like it's a powerful enough card that I want it, but it doesn't really fit this deck, but it's powerful enough that I want it, basically. It gives the deck a little bit more variety, which, you know, isn't bad at all. It can deal with more types of situations by having cards like one-off cards like this in there, so I don't mind that at all. Pillory of the Sleepless is a really good card, and it works really well in this deck as well, because you do have some tricks that just continue to put pressure on your opponent and slowly whittle them down. That's something that this deck does really well. So basically, it's not a terrible card to have. I mean, wow, it's not a terrible card to have. No, it's a really good card to have, but it's no unmake. And I definitely want to run all unmakes. Like, this is 3 mana, exile anything. This is just better than Murder. I mean, even in the mono black deck, this is better than Murder, because you can only pay black for it if you want. Like, it's so ridiculous. Just really, really good. So unmake is just pretty much the best removal card in the format. So you want to run all of those, which means that Pillory, you don't want to run all Pillories, because then you've got 8 kill spells at the 3 mana range, and that's a little bit ridiculous. You don't need that many removal spells, so just 2 Pillories, because I could really, I want at least 2 there, because I want to be assured that I'm gonna draw some. But actually I wanted 3 in there because of that reason, but I really couldn't find place for the 3rd one, so I'd rather have 2. And this at least ensures that you won't draw 2 of them in a situation where maybe you really actually need to remove the creature from the game, or at least into the graveyard or something, rather than just making it unable to attack or block. I mean, that's just bad if you draw 2 of these in that situation. So yeah, Tainted Sigil is not a card for 1v1. I used it to great success in the free-for-all, but it's not good in 1v1, so just live gain. You don't need that live gain, so don't run it. Restless Apparition is a very interesting card. Yeah, it's just an annoying card for your opponent to deal with. He never knows what's going on with this card, and sometimes, you know, you don't have to tap the mana, because maybe they won't block if you attack with it into their 3/3, you know. And if they do block, you know, all the better, you use the mana then. But it's just it gives you a lot of options, this card does, and it works really well with Ghost Council of Orzhov. So I like it for that reason. Just nice. Just a nice card. Vampire Nighthawk. If you want to compare these two, like Vampire Nighthawk, there's 2 of those and 2 Restless Apparitions, and I really needed to make a choice between the 2, because as you can see, I'm already running 12 free drops. I didn't want to run any more of this. Then I feel like this deck is good enough that you really want to look at the mana curve more than at what is the most powerful card in any situation. So I wanted to run no more than 12 free drops. So I had to choose between removing a Vampire Nighthawk or a Restless Apparition. My choice fell on Vampire Nighthawk just because of the 2 black. In its casting cost, I definitely think that Vampire Nighthawk is probably a little bit more powerful of a creature, because it just swings the game so much. If they've got something huge, they can attack with it because of the Death Touch. And you don't need to spend mana on it like you do with Onyx Mage. However, this guy is more... There's more... like, you don't need the 2 black to be able to cast this guy. There's more options available to this guy, so he makes the deck more varied. And like I said, with Midnight Haunting, I like having a little bit more of a varied deck, so that's why I went with the Restless Apparition, another Restless Apparition instead of the 2nd Vampire Nighthawk. But you know, do what you want. If you want to run 2 Vampire Nighthawks and 1 Restless Apparition, I'm definitely not saying that's bad. and we're really looking at small differences in the results. If you want to make that distinction, this deck is so powerful that that little difference isn't going to make much of a difference at all. But min-maxing here and saying that I'm taking 2 Restless Apparitions. Steel Moon Cavalier is just a card you want to run. It just screws over black decks, it screws over white decks, it screws over the mirror match, and it screws over Exalted Darkness. I mean, that's a lot of decks it screws over, and a lot of them are very powerful as well. So definitely want to run this card just for that reason. Of course, like if you're playing against Mindstorms and you get this guy, then you're not happy, but I feel that the times that you are extremely happy to see this guy outweigh the times that you're not happy to see this guy. So and again, a card with a lot of options, so many options, you don't even want to know how many options. So really powerful there. That's something interesting actually. When I first saw this deck, I thought that, okay, so it's gonna be powerful, it's gonna be like Obedient Dead that can actually deal with stuff that Obedient Dead can't deal with, because it has exile, and it has stuff that can actually deal with enchantments and artifacts and all that. But what I didn't realize, like what I thought was, well, so it's a powerful deck, but it probably gets destroyed in the match against Exalted Darkness, because it's black and white. Exalted Darkness has like 3 creatures with protection from black and 2 creatures with protection from white, or the other way around, can never be sure. Either way, so I thought that would be a bad matchup, but it's actually a really good matchup because of Steel Moon Cavalier, but not only that, also because Zealous Persecution actually kills all of those creatures with protection from black or white. So it's not a problem at all, and this deck actually does really well against Exalted Darkness. But moving on, this is deck build. We're going to be running out of time if I keep talking about these cards so much. So Vindicate, I don't know what to tell you, man. It is 3 mana and deals with anything you want to deal with, so you definitely want to run it. Damnation, sure, this card isn't always going to be useful, but the times that it is useful, it's going to be very, very useful. So I feel like, yeah, you do want to run this card, and you can plan toward it. Like, mass removal is powerful. You don't want too much mass removal, but some of it in a deck is powerful. And again, with the one-offs, I like putting one-offs in my deck. I feel that it gives my deck a lot more variety. So this is definitely a card I would want to put one-off in there. If there was 2, probably wouldn't run the second one, but 1, perfect. I like it. So it deals with situations that the other cards might not deal with. So yeah, just a good card in general. Blood Hunter Bet, I actually wanted to run at least one of these. I like them in this deck. I actually genuinely like them in this deck more than I do in Obedient Dead, because this deck is less late game oriented and more tempo oriented. So the card fits it better here, but there's just no room for it. In the end, I just had to cut all of those. Every time I drew them in my testing, they were useful, but like I make a distinction where if something is useful, I put in a small Y next to the name. But if the card is extremely useful, or like just swings me the game and wins me the game outright, then I put a capital letter Y there. So this card, every time I drew it, it became a Y, but it never became a capital letter Y, and there are a lot of cards that became a capital letter Y, which this card didn't. So yeah, while it's always useful in pretty much every situation I encountered with it, it was never extremely useful, and some of these cards definitely were. So that's why I don't run Blood Hunter Bet, and I run these other 4-drops instead. Ghost Council of Orzhov. I guess this is the guild leader for this deck. Yeah, it's hard to cast, but that's all. Like, aside from that, this card is ridiculous, and there's just no reason to not run this. It's insane. You can do a lot of tricks with this card, and he is definitely a reason I wanted to include one Blood Hunter Bet, because actually, no, that's not for Blood Hunter. Sorry, I'm confusing cards. But anyways, he's just really good. You can do some tricks with him. He's good, and he makes the Midnight Hunting pretty juicy as well. When you have 2 guys, you can sack to it. Although that I guess that counts for Doomed Traveler too, though. To be honest with you. But yeah, you normally play him turn 5 rather than turn 4, so he's actually another 5 drop, which means there are 5 4 drops and 7 5 drops. So, oh well. Yeah, not much to say about that other than he's awesome. Yep. So Guardian Seraph is also a really powerful card. I just like this, and again another one-off that does something that your opponent may not be able to deal with, or deals with something that you may not have otherwise been able to deal with. So it's good. Brings variety to the deck and allows you to deal with more kinds of situations, and definitely walls off goblins as well. Actually, this deck does that really well. That's something I forgot to mention. Let's go back here. Sorry about this. But let's go back to the Doom Traveler here, because that was a point I was trying to make about Doom Traveler. Is that I know people are gonna say, well, what about goblins? Isn't this just really good against goblins? Well, I actually didn't meet too many goblins players while I was testing this deck, because not a lot of people are playing the deck anymore. But I decided that, you know what, I should play a few games against the AI playing goblins with this deck. Just to see if the Doom Traveler is really that needed against goblins. And my findings were that, you know, you don't really need the Doom Traveler to win against goblins with this deck. The deck is powerful enough, and certainly Zealous Persecution is just ridiculous against goblins, by the way. But Edge of Divinity is as well. There's just a lot of stuff that is really good against goblins. So Vampire Nighthawk, of course, as well, and yeah, there's just a lot of stuff the goblins can deal with. This deck doesn't need to run Doom Traveler just to be able to survive that matchup, so to speak. So yeah. Anyways, moving back on to the 4 drops here. Keening Banshee is just a definite 2-for-1, so you want to run this. It's better than the 2-1 guy with First Strike, because a 2-1 guy with First Strike, just the body is not always relevant. And this guy's body is, again, with the 1 toughness and 2 toughness debacle here. The 2 toughness is better, and this guy flies, so even if it can't trade with anything, maybe it can fly over their heads. So I definitely like this one much better than the one in Obedient Dead that is 2-1 First Strike. And not only that, but this thing can actually always kill something, whereas, well, I mean, there's always gonna likely be something with 2 toughness that it kills, whereas the other one, if you're playing against another deck with black creatures, then it may not be able to even do anything. So I definitely like this one a lot better, so good card there. Falcon Rev Noble, I think if you're gonna run Bloodhunter bets, then you would replace them with Falcon Rev Noble in a free-for-all game or something like that. Then this card would be kind of the same thing that Bloodhunter bet does, except better there. Whereas Bloodhunter bet does this guy's job better in 1v1, because yeah, you want to be a little bit more tempo oriented in 1v1. So yeah, but I'm not running these, but just the interesting thing to note there. But you shouldn't run these in 1v1. You should instead run Bloodhunter bet if you want that kind of effect, which personally I don't feel the deck really needs, and there are too many good 4 drops to include either of them anyways. So moving on, Gravedigger is a 2-for-1, but it's really slow, and you don't even get to put whatever you get on the board, which I think 4 mana, that wouldn't even have been broken at all. I already didn't really like this card in the Dragons deck, and I really didn't like the Dragons deck, so that should tell you something about the value of this card compared to the value of this deck, which, you know, is just a lot better. So there's no need to run Gravedigger here. Voracious Hatchling is it's a 2-2 with lifelink for 4 mana. I guess that's a way to look at it, but really it's a 6-6 with lifelink for 4 mana, and it's totally insane. Again, just like Ghost Council of Orzhov, if you think the opponent has something to deal with it, as long as it's a 2-2, then you don't have to play this turn 4. You play this turn 5, and play like Edge of the Divinity on it if they're playing Burn, and then you can, then you're like, okay, deal with this. Haha, I got a 7-7 with lifelink for 4 mana. That's not bad at all. So yeah, definitely a very good card. I run both of those, and just the tempo gained from having creatures with lifelink is definitely already worth it as well, actually, because it really helps out this deck. Because if there's one thing this deck loses to is if there's tempo, because this deck is so powerful that if you get the chance to breathe and do stuff, then you're probably gonna win. So the only weakness was like tempo, so you can counter that with lifelink guys, and these become really powerful as well. So yeah, definitely good. Angel of Flight Alabaster, there just aren't enough spirit cards for this card to be worth it. It's actually a very powerful 5-drop, and maybe powerful than some of these other 5-drops. However, in this deck it's not, because there aren't enough spirit cards. And one thing that's interesting is Midnight Hunting isn't even a spirit card, because it's not like an instant tribal spirit or anything, so that doesn't even count. It gets back Ghost Council of Orzhov, I guess, but that's it. So Bloodgift Demon is amazing, and Divinity of Pride is amazing, so you want to run these at least. One interesting thing I can say about the 5... Okay, by the way, Obnixilis is amazing as well. One interesting thing about the 5-drops is that just for raw power, I think this is better. Like the third Bloodgift Demon. Like a Bloodgift Demon is better than the Deathbringer Leash in most situations, but I include Deathbringer Leash anyway because there's some situations that Bloodgift Demon may not be able to deal with, which Deathbringer Leash can. So again, with the one-offs, just bringing some more variety to the deck and making it more powerful. Other than that, I don't have a lot more to say about this, other than, oh yeah! That's the best I can do, guys, sorry. Anyways, Shepherd of the Lost is just horrible. A 3/3 guy for 5 mana, and his abilities aren't relevant because the body isn't big enough for them to be relevant. Soul Feast, okay, so it's tempo oriented card, and this is a deck that may have trouble in that department. I got comments on Exsanguinate, not including Exsanguinate in Obedient Dead, when I did the deck build for that way back when. You'll be pleased to know that since I have added an Exsanguinate to that deck, but I have to add there that the metagame did turn out to be, like, with the arrival of Rakdos and yeah, mostly because Rakdos was added in the expansion, I felt like the card was needed even more than it was before, but since I've added it, I've definitely seen its use, so I can admit my losses there. But Soul Feast, I think, is not a card you want to run because it doesn't have it isn't good in as many situations as Exsanguinate is. So yeah, it's just not. And again, it's no Drain Life, I think is the card. 5 mana card. Target creature or player, or deal 3 damage to target creature or player, and you gain 3 life. That's a little bit less life gain and dealt, but just the option of being able to use it on a creature. I feel that card would have been good in this deck, but Soul Feast isn't, so yeah. Necromancer's Covenant, you'd almost be tempted to run this just because it's a 6-drop. It's the only 6-drop in the deck, and otherwise the transition from 5 mana to 7 mana is a little bit weird, but it's just a horrible card. It might be better in like 2-headed giant or free-for-all or stuff like that, because there's likely to be much more creatures in graveyard. But in 1v1 this definitely isn't worth running, and especially not since this deck just exiles a lot of stuff and doesn't like to put stuff in graveyards. So there's not likely to be much in a graveyard. And this, excuse me, this is only worth it if you can get at least 3 creatures, and that's not always likely to happen. And if I'm playing something for 6 or more mana, I want to at least be assured that it actually does something, you know. So I'm not running that, definitely. Angel of Despair is a huge 2-for-1, but it can deal with anything, just like Vindicate. It's a Vindicate on a stick, and on top of that it's a big flying 5/5. So even though it's a 7 mana card, it is definitely very tempo oriented as well as card advantage oriented, because you deal with their big threat and now you have a big threat. You just change the game completely, and I feel that is definitely worth it to run one 7-drop for that. And this is, even though, you know, it's not as slow as Obedient Dead, this is a bit of a slow deck, so running a 7 drop is definitely not bad there. So yeah, that is in there. Now, Debtor's Knell, I feel is not worth it. I didn't feel this was worth it in Exalted, and I felt that maybe it would be worth it in this card, in this deck when I first saw it. But again, there's not always likely to be stuff in the graveyard, so why am I spending 7 mana to basically do nothing at times? So I don't want that. But it is a cool card. I'm sure you can win some games with it that otherwise you might not have with any of the other cards. But there's certainly going to be games where you lose because you have this and it does nothing rather than something else. And I feel like that's gonna happen more than games that you win because you have this. And anyways, Vishkal is almost as good as Angel of Despair. It's certainly also a big tempo swing because it is lifelink. And this whole ability stuff over here, you'd think that that is just putting eggs in a basket, but really it's not. It's just mostly, if you play this for 7 mana, then if they do remove it, you can still do stuff with it. You know, you can kill some of your own creatures and deal with their stuff. Like maybe your creature is passive, or maybe it's got a Pillory of the Sleepless on it. Sacrificing it is actually good for you rather than bad. So you know, it's all bonus. You don't have to use these. A big flying lifelink for 5/5 is actually already pretty good. So yeah, I do feel that 7 mana is a little bit much, and while I really do like the card, I think that well, Angel of Despair is definitely better in 1v1, but only a little bit better than this card is. But all these 5 drops need to be just played, so there's just no room for this. But if you were playing free-for-all, then maybe you want to make this change now, because this card is more oriented to multiplayer formats. So that's actually a theme with this deck, isn't it? Some of the cards I removed is that they're more oriented to multiplayer formats. But oh well, don't worry, because the deck is still really powerful anyways in 1v1. Sanguine Praetor is just bad pretty much, and Blazing Archon is 9 mana, so I don't care what it does. Alright, well, that was a little bit longer than I'd like it to be. I did go very in depth with some of these cards, so I guess you can make a comment on whether or not you like me to go as in depth on some of these cards. I really did feel like I just wanted to do it though. So I hope you enjoyed the long video, and if it helped you in any way, or you did indeed enjoy it, then go ahead and leave your thumbs up, because I've been talking for 30 minutes, so I would definitely appreciate that. I would appreciate some reward for talking for 30 minutes. Anyways, my name's been Nemo, and it will still be Nemo in the next video. We're gonna get to do some gameplay with this deck, and yeah. One last thing I want to mention is that I think this deck could be, well, let's just say one of the most powerful decks in the format. I feel like in this format there isn't really one most powerful deck, but this is definitely up there with the other most powerful decks. So let's leave it at that. I feel like it is more powerful than Obedient Dead though, because it's basically Obedient Dead, but it can deal with more situations. So yeah. Anyways, see you guys in the next video. Gameplay is coming up. Alright. Ciao. Thanks for watching.